Testing. Okay, the mic works right now. Okay, I owe some people a public service announcement. I'm 3 minutes late for the scheduled stream. So, first things first, I forgot to unmute myself for the last minute. Second thing second, I did not get the right RNTP stream key from Restream when I scheduled this. So I had a little bit of a what the hell is going on moment with the stream not starting on the red channel, and then I was like, oh, what the hell is going on? Third things third, I know that some of y'all over here are actually busy, so please don't force yourself to come on here just because I'm streaming live. It's unscheduled. You can watch the playback. I'm not a professional reader, so some of you just like to hear me babble without knowing what exactly I'm saying. That's fine. I actually educated myself like 30 minutes ago that I have been saying some things on the stream wrong. Like it's not eunuch, it's eunuch. Eunuch. Something like that. Eunuch. Yeah, it's eunuch. Okay, according to Google. Let me just check that again. If I'm saying this correct, it's so hard. It's Greek. Eunuch. Okay, I've got it wrong like all three times. It's eunuch. I hope I remember this. And it's not Sidan, it's Sidan. And it's not divan, it's divan? Yes, it's divan. It's actually divan. And it's palanquin, not palanquin. And it's pavilion. Pavilion. Is it pavilion? Yeah, I think it's pavilion. I keep saying pavilion for some reason. And I keep saying imperial instead of imperial. So yeah, forgive my blunders. It's not professional, but I will check the pronunciation when I go through along the way. Third things third, some of you who are new and just came here because of the wife is first, you might realize that there's a little character on the right side of the screen. That's me. Say hi. That's me now. So technically I'm an anime girl and I'm a very cool anime girl. So yeah, we'll just be looking at me doing this today with no real purpose of why I'm doing this at all. Because someone in the voice chat told me, oh my god, you should be doing this, podcasting. You should be I don't know, you should be a voice actress. And I'm just like, you should be a VTuber. And I'm like, okay, so you guys spoke. And then I had my Patreon. A lot of thanks to Anike, and I'm not sure if I got that name pronounced correct again. So yeah, we actually have some money from that, and I actually bought this software that helps me with this VTuber that doesn't need that expensive flip motion thingy. So I didn't spend like a fortune on this. I spent like what, $15 for software that automatically makes me an anime girl that I can download for free. I didn't make this myself, okay? I don't have that much spare time, and I essentially use this for writing streams. So yes, writing streams are coming back again for the ones that I own, of course, like the work rights that I own. The ones that I don't own, well, I'm not gonna do it for every chapter, and I'm not gonna do it very frequently in case the contract company comes after my ass and then I don't have justifications, even though technically it's in a gray zone. So yeah, whatever. Right. And then yes, Whip Psycho TV, I see you're here again. Thank you for joining like almost all my streams. I see you here. Right, so without further ado, this is your bedtime story. I missed who is the first person on message here. It's okay, I'll play back and check. So thank you all for joining. I don't expect you to stay for long. So, would you like to see the actual chapter while I read, or are you okay with just this screen and watching the chat and just listening instead of looking at the stream? You guys let me know along the way. Okay, I'll check. So, for the first chapter, this is gonna be it. So, chapter 11, I'm gonna read 5 chapters today. So, chapter 11, Villa. The black steed carrying the handsome prince swished by on the streets, and the common people who set up stores on the street kept their calm, and one after another got out of the way. Did you see? If you keep on being nosy, then we'll just let the Cheng Wang take you away. The woman who sold vegetables threw down her basket and pointed to the silhouette flying by to the child who wouldn't stop crying. Xingsha reined in his horse to slow down his speed, and happened to hear this sentence. He could not help but knit his brows. Rumors say that the Cheng Wang is tyrannical, killing 100,000 prisoners of war on the battlefield. Just the mention of his name causes young children's nightmares. This was one of the justifications for why during that time, those people accused him of official misconduct. He killed and took prisoners 100,000 people. Really ridiculous. Not to even mention the campaign against the Xiongnu nomads. He himself only brought 50,000 troops and horses. The entire Xiongnu military did not even have 100,000 people. During that time, he led 2,000 troops to surround the Xiongnu with their general, trying to urge them to surrender. But those people's nature was fierce. Even facing death, they would not surrender. So he just let people kill wave by wave. At the very end, the general, when trying to take a group of soldiers to break out of the enclosure, he was beheaded by Jing Shao. The living people they were able to capture was less than 500. Moreover, each of them hated all the Chinese troops to the bone. If they did not kill them, then it would cause no end to trouble. It turned out that rumors have already been circulating since that time. The weather was sunny and cloudless today. The sun slid in from the open window, and the white sandalwood desk was warm. Mu Hanzhang sat at the desk, holding an accounting ledger and carefully checking his dowry. The North Marquis's house had a great line of businesses, but their numbers were also large. After calculating, the total amount of property allocated to him was less than 30,000 silver taels. His mother, who had who did the accounting, had a look through it and could pick out any problems. Although 30,000 did not make him lack too much, it also did not let him receive any additional advantages. Moreover, they could not give him any ancestral properties or land, and after the passing of the new year, the actual silver given to him was basically nothing. All that was left to him were some untouchable villages, farmland, and then some silver was also used to deal with his wedding attire and the likes. In the eastern outskirts, he remembered that there is a barren forest with black locust plants growing thickly and craggy, rocky soil, making it impossible to plant anything. It was also not suitable for building a courtyard. It was basically a waste. And this vast piece of soil still accounted for most of his family property. Mu Hanzhang sneered. Concubine Tu was really not afraid of people criticizing her behind her back. However, in this way, he basically still has no cash in his hands. The 100,000 taels that his mother gave was a lump sum, and he did not want to move this sum of money unless absolutely necessary. Wang Fei, the secondary wife, has come to the East Court. Yun Shu scuttled into the study and said in a panic, "What does she want to do coming here?" Mu Hanzhang frowned and put the ledgers into the cabinet. Didn't she just come over after breakfast to pay respects? It must be about the household allowances. If she says that it will take a few months to hand over the accounts books, you must not agree to her. Yun Chu wrinkled his nose, his tone quite resentful. Hearing this, Mu Hanzhang didn't say anything, only invited Madame Song into the small study. Song Lingxin skillfully smiled as she walked in. Qie visited rather rudely previously, hoping Wang Fei would not blame. Mu Hanzhang was impatient in dealing with her, and after exchanging civilities for a couple of sentences, he asked her what the issue was. According to customs, after Wang Fei has crossed the threshold, all economic affairs of the family should be handed to you. It is only that the Prince's Palace has always distributed the silver on the first of every month. There are many affairs this month. Handing it over now to Wang Fei, I'm afraid things will go wrong. So Qie came to ask Wang Fei to allow this subordinate to retain it, Song Lingxin said with a smile. Mu Hanzhang looked down, playing with the white jade paperweight on the table, thumbed unconsciously, rubbing the smooth and round edge. This is a small habit he has when he was thinking about things. Since that's the case, you may continue to manage it for a few days. As for the supervision of the other wives, tonight wait for Wang Ye to return, then we'll discuss it. Seeing that this person was not bothered, Song Lingxin's complexion turned green. But she shortly regained her smile. Yes, we need to still seek Wang Ye's opinion. Just Qie is saying it is not most important. There is one more thing. As she said this, she put a small book from her hands down onto the table. What is this? Mu Hanzhang glanced at it. There was no writing on the book cover, only a painted peony flower. These are the arrangements for the dates of attending to Wang Ye's bed. As Song Lingxin said it, She always felt that confronting this male Wang Fei to talk about these things was a little embarrassing, but they couldn't just not talk about it. Jie has talked it over with our two younger sisters, and we wrote all the discussed dates on there, inviting Wang Fei to look it over. The earlier we can confirm this, the better, as it will permit us to prepare the management arrangements. This subject also made Mu Hanzheng somewhat uncomfortable. And so, after expressing that he understood, he waved his hand to dismiss her back to the West Court. In the suburbs of Beijing, Chen Wang's villa. This villa was bestowed upon him by the emperor. Behind it was a tall inclined mountain, and on the mountain was a lush green vegetation and a babbling of brooks. It was the villa he stayed at during the summertime. This subordinate greets Wang Ye. Once he entered the villa, a tall man in black clothing took the lead, stepping forth to make one's salutations. Where is Renfeng? Jing Shao handed the horse to one of the servants, welcoming him, and asked the big man dressed in black. The commander is in the martial arts practice arena. This subordinate will go fetch him. No need. You can just follow me. Go take a look. Jing Shao placed both his hands behind his back, not rushing, but not moving too slowly either, through the round wooden porch heading west of the villa. The area of the villa is much larger than that of the palace in the city. The entire west side has been converted into a martial arts arena. In the center of the arena is a 3-foot-high wooden platform, and the weaponry was placed on the rack on the top of the platform. At this time, 2 people wearing grey imperial bodyguard uniforms were busily sparring on the platform. One person wielded a broadsword, and the other wielded a pike. One would attack the other, and the other would follow suit. Below the platform were a crowd of people wearing the same grey-colored imperial bodyguard uniforms. Once a brilliant bout of sparring occurred, they would all shout and yell praises. It was extremely lively. When Jing Shao came, he just happened to see that the broadsword-wielding competitor had been thrown off the stage by his opponent. His sudden powerful thrust that caught his adversary off guard was quite beautiful. Good! Wang Ye! Everyone just noticed the arrival of their master, and they knelt down to pay respects one by one. A man, dressed in black exercise clothing, with a lanky stature, walked from the crowd and knelt down on one knee in front of Jing Shao. This subordinate was not aware of Wang Ye's arrival. Please excuse this one for not going out to meet you, hoping for Wang Ye's forgiveness. You rascal, what are you acting for? Jing Shao permitted everyone to rise and gave his head a slap. This man dressed in black was the commander that everyone spoke of. This villa housed the 200 guards who belonged to the Chen Wang's inner circle of guards. Renfeng was the commander of these guards. Hehe. Renfeng smiled and stood up. The scar that cut across his left eyebrow to the corner of his something made him look rather fearful. But the way his face became round when smiling actually made him seem rather simple and honest. The last time Mr. Yun said that this subordinate was too vulgar and not understanding of etiquette, so this subordinate wanted to learn something from those high-ranked officers' etiquette. Jing Shao raised his eyebrow. Just you? After he finished speaking, he gave him a slap again, grabbed his collar, and dragged him onto stage. Don't bother with those useless things. Come, accompany Chen Wang to loosen his muscles and bones. Renfeng immediately complained. Wang Ye, this subordinate has just fought for 4 hours. Less nonsense. Jing Shao ignored him and just threw him a weapon. He lifted the broadsword and charged forth to slash with a big knife. By noon, Jing Shao, sure enough, had really not returned to the residence. Mu Hanzhang had lunch by himself, and then went to the small study room with great interest. He threw the book with the painting of the peony flower aside. There was a rack of books in the study that did not belong to him. He has not had a chance to examine them carefully. Jing Shao said last night this small study would belong to him from now on, and that he could read all the books as he pleased. Besides some of the new travel recollection essays that he read yesterday, it seemed that there were some books here that he already read. Mu Hanzhang guessed that the books Jing Shao placed here before were the books that he didn't usually use, but hadn't stored away yet in the Yingfeng pavilions. I think I said this wrong. Pavilion, something, big study. He reached out and took out a set of books wrapped in blue-colored hard leather and put it on the desk. He slid out one volume out on the set to take a look. It turned out to be a military book. But to think about it, it would be strange if there were poetry verses in Jing Shao's study. Slowly opening it, Mu Hanzheng could not help but widen his eyes. Between the orderly lines of black text were numerous, densely packed annotations written in vermilion ink. I think I got that wrong. How do I say this? Pavilion. Pavilion. Yeah. Hold up, Googling in progress. Pavilion. I was wrong. It's pavilion. My bad. So that was chapter 11. How do you guys find it? Okay, I'm gonna move on to chapter 12. So chapter 12 is serving at the bedside. The vermilion calligraphy on it was visibly soft and immature. Looking at it, this book seems to have been around for some years. Mu Hanzhang flipped through the whole set of books one by one. It turned out that he was already working so hard since he was very young. It was no wonder that Jing Shao was able to defeat the Xiongnu in his teens, rising above his two imperial brothers and also raising a title, that of Chen Wang, before them. Wang Fei, I went to ask Sister Zhixi. Yunshu bounced in, moving in front of the desk while grinning. What did you ask? Mu Hanzhang, seeing him smile, put the book in his hand with the rest of the volumes and returned it to its original place. Previously, the schedule of attending Wang Ye's bed was set by the secondary wife. Each month she would get 20 days, and the other two concubines would get 4 each. Yunju, thinking of Zhixi's expression when she spoke, couldn't help but snicker. Those 8 days are when secondary wife is menstruating. Mu Hanzhang glanced at his little servant, who had a face with an evil smile, and helplessly shook his head. Having not yet married a girl, like Zhixi explained, this kind of thing, he really is. But Wang Ye has been fighting wars all year round, and has rarely stayed overnight in the West Court. Yunshu was afraid that his master would be uncomfortable in his heart, so he quickly added a sentence. So young, yet so crafty, you understand a lot. Mu Hanzhang nodded Yunshu's head. Of course, my uncle said that in a couple of years it would be about time for me to find a wife. Yunshu shook his head proudly and picked up the book on the side. Wang Fei doesn't have the problem of menstruating. Why not arrange for Wang Ye to come to the East Court for 25 days, and the rest of the days just give them each one? How could that be? Mu Hanzhang broke into laughter. If he arranged it like this, he was afraid that very quickly rumors would be spreading about him, envying the benevolent, and create an unfavorable reputation for himself. Although thinking of that pain he had felt in the bridal room that day, he still had lingering fears. If he had to do that for most of the month, it would just be too hard to bear. Furrowing his brows, he opened the peony flower book. All of the previous records were all there, and they were according to the same way that he had heard from Yunshu. Sandwiched in the middle of the book were some papers. On them were a few written new arrangement Madame Song had devised. The meaning was more or less that it was split by the 15th of each month. The first half of the month, Wang Ye would rest in the East Court with Mu Hanzhang at night. The second half, the side wife would get 9 days, and then each of the two concubines would get 3. Which family's first wife doesn't at least reserve 18 days? The side wife is schemed well. Yunju stood on the side and couldn't help but curl his lips. These 2 years, when the side wife was the one to manage the household, his monthly allowance of silver has never risen. The red envelope he received at the end of the year was less each year. Yet the few chambermaids she brought with her had quite a cushy and lucrative job. All the servants in the prince's manor were long unsatisfied with her. Mu Hanzhang raised an eyebrow. This arrangement, contrary to his belief, was actually not bad for him. So he took the writing brush and, using powerful yet elegant calligraphy, copied word for word the secondary wife's arrangements in the painted flower book. When Jing Shao came back, it was already dark. He first took a shower and washed away the sweat and mud, then changed into a loose casual attire. Wang Ye, today Li Daren came again. Your subordinates responded to him according to what you instructed. After dinner, Steward Yun came over and reported to Jing Shao about the situation of today's visitors. I know, saying that Jing Shao dealt with a few things and dismissed Steward Yun. Then he stretched, really wanting to just go lie down on the bed. Wang Ye, you just ate. You will get an indigestion. Mu Hanzhang stepped forward and pulled at him. I'm tired. Jing Shao was not willing. Today, after fighting so much in a day, his body was still sore. Mu Hanzhang saw him with no expression on his face, but his eyes were actually full of dissatisfaction. Like a child who was forced to get up from bed early, he resisted the urge to reach out and rub his head. He pulled him over to sit on the soft divan. Lean against this to help your digestion. Jing Shao blinked. Junqing was worrying about him. As a result, his original unhappiness immediately vanished. Pulling his family's Wang Fei to lean on the soft divan together. No, taking a walk will be fine. Mu Hanzhang couldn't help but laugh, and he sat up. As someone who always seized opportunities, Jing Shao took advantage and laid down on the other person's leg. Junqing, you help me massage my shoulders. They ache very much. Chen is not a servant girl. I don't know how to do this. Though Mu Hanzhang said this, he still pressed his hand on his shoulder. When he was pressing on a certain place, Jing Shao suddenly sucked in some cold air. Hurts? Mu Hanzhang was startled. He actually didn't use any strength. How could that have hurt him? It might be bruised. Jing Shao said vaguely, not minding. Wang Ye went to practice martial arts today? Mu Hanzhang frowned. Opening up some of his collar, he saw a large patch of bruised flesh. Seeing this, he could only summon someone to bring some medicated oil to help him circulate the blood. The warm and slender fingers that were moistened with the cooling medicated oil made contact with his skin, and Jing Shao couldn't help but hold his breath. When the hand rubbed at where the bruise was, he could imagine the shape of that slender, good-looking hand that was without any calluses. Jing Shao couldn't help but grab his other hand in front of him. Shining in the candlelight, the slender and beautiful hand looked flawless. Dispersed among the lustrous and soft skin, one could see several inconspicuous blue-green blood veins through his jade-like skin. Each slender finger was long like a stalk of jade-colored spring onion, and the fingers and the nails are smooth and tidy. Putting it in the palm of your hand and kneading it felt like it was very likable, so he couldn't help but pull it to his lips and gently nibble on it. Wang Ye! Mu Hanzhang was startled and quickly retracted his hand. Junqing's hand is so beautiful. Jing Shao turned his body over and looked at him innocently. Mu Hanzhang was helpless and helped him gather his clothing. Today, Madame Song came over to discuss the management of the household. Right now, it is in the middle of the 3rd month, so there are many things going on in the residence. Chen, seeing that she is willing to take care of it, thinks why not just let her manage it for a few more months. Jing Shao, hearing this, furrowed his brow. He lifted his eyes to look at his expression, but saw that he was still maintaining his mild expression, and could not make anything out of it. Madame Song saying these words at this time was only not wanting to hand over any power. But if she continued to be allowed to manage the household, Junqing's reputation in the residence would be very affected. He didn't believe Junqing, someone who was this smart, would not be able to tell. He couldn't help but sigh. You are the Wang Fei. These things should be done according to your wish. If you find it too much of a brother, then let Dwarf Wu handle it. I will have Song Ling Xing turn over all the accounting books to you tomorrow. Having said so much these 2 days, Xunqing was still sounding out his attitude towards him. Jing Shao felt a little tired. Now that the rumors of his brutality had begun to spread in the capital, no one in this world was willing to trust him. He silently got up. Jing Shao did not look at the person on the divan again, just took off his coat and climbed onto the bed. Wang Ye. Mu Hanzhang looked at Jing Shao's back and felt a little ache in his heart. He realized that he was hurt by his pretentious words, pursed his lips, and also followed him onto the bed. Holding onto the arm of the person whose back was facing him, he said, Wang Ye, Chen did not have that meaning. For the turning over of the accounting books from the previous years, Chen must look over first. It is better for the most recent account books to be handed over next month. Otherwise, for a long period of time, Chen will be unfamiliar with it, and it will be a mess. Facing the wall, not talking. Shaking his arm, still not talking. Mu Hanzheng moved over sneakily, glanced at Jing Shao's face. He saw that the man with his eyes closed and quietly called, Shao, are you listening to me? Didn't hear it. Jing Shao turned his body back a little, but on his body was resting a person, so as he moved, he accidentally caused the person to fall onto his body. Thus, he took this opportunity to bury his face into the pillow and stopped moving. The person on his body couldn't help but release a muffled laugh out loud. Then I will say it again. Tomorrow, I will have them take out the account books from the previous years for Chen to see. On the first day of the next month, I will have her hand over all the accounts books. With Jing Shao hearing this, his heart was finally comfortable. With a flip of his body, he pressed the person who was on top of him under him. Wang Ye. Mu Hanzheng did not know why they were suddenly in such an ambiguous posture. Jing Shao wrinkled his brows and looked at the small, slightly parted, pale lips and bent over, pressing his own onto them. Mu Hanzheng's eyes widened, not knowing how to react. He only felt that the soft and warm lips were imprinted on his own. It was just a light touch, that of a dragonfly on water, but to him it felt like a long time. This is punishment. In the future, the next time you try to speak so politely with me, for every sentence, you will be punished with one of them. Jing Shao smiled, pleased with himself. Mu Hanzheng was speechless, so he could only turn his head, refusing to look at him, yet his entire handsome face was flushed thoroughly with a bashful red. Jing Shao, seeing him like this, only felt a movement in his heart. He couldn't help but kiss him again on the cheek. Then he followed along to his face and slid down his chin, nipping softly at his neck. Mu Hanzheng's body couldn't help but tremble. His breathing had also become shorter and faster. Wang Ye, don't. Jing Shao had already pulled away at his lapel, finally kissing his collarbone. Hearing those words, he took a bite from the beautiful collarbones. Call me Shao. Mu Hanzheng heard the person on top of his body's breathing getting rougher and heavier, and he felt the change in his body at the root of his leg. He immediately stiffened his body. Shao, don't. In his voice, he heard fear. Jing Shao lifted his head to look at him and saw that the original blushing countenance had become pale. He could not help but sigh and rolled over to lay on his side on the bed. Mu Hanzheng pursed his lips. As a wife, refusing to be intimate with one's husband was not right. However, his experience of that night was too terrible. Even if he knew it was wrong, he did not speak again, and just tightly grasped at the corner of the quilt. When the servant girl saw what time it was, she extinguished the lights outside, and inside the room suddenly darkened. The servant girl went on night duty, in with light steps and light hands to gently put down the curtain, and then quickly retreated outside. Jing Shao himself relaxed in a little while. Then, when he felt the heat near his body retreat, he reached out with his hand to pull the stiff body into the blankets. I'm sorry. Jing Shao heard the person next to him say quietly. In the darkness, his lips hooked up, and he gathered the other in an embrace, saying, Sleep. It's nothing. Chapter 13. Salt Trade Certificate. The next day, Mu Hanzheng woke up in Jing Shao's embrace. Warm breath fluttered on his neck, and a slender leg rested on his body, pressing on one of his legs until it felt numb. Out of sorts, he shifted a little, and the person holding him slowly woke up, gently exhaled. Junqing. His dazed call had a languid, nasal sound. It's time to get up. Mu Hanzheng moved again. Unexpectedly, the person who hugged him didn't let go, but actually hugged him closer. Don't even have to go to morning court. What's the hurry? Jing Shao buried his face into the person in his embrace and rubbed it a few times. Doesn't Wang Ye have an appointment with Li Daren today? Mu Hanzhang wanted to say that after breakfast. The other consorts would be coming to pay their respects, and he didn't know what he would do if they saw the two of them were still in bed. Jing Shao, still unwilling, dawdled for a little while before he got up. In his previous life, after he started the third expedition against the three vassal states, he basically never had the chance to sleep leisurely like this. After being put in prison, there was even less of a chance. There was only ice-cold limestone slab and the filthy hay. Therefore, he found that now he was more and more inclined towards warm and clean things. Looking at Mu Hanzhang gracefully putting on his outer clothing, today wearing snow-white garments from head to toe, he felt that this person was not even tainted by a speck of dust. Jing Shao supported his head with one hand lying down sideways on the bed, watching a ray of sunlight illuminating that person who seemed like an exiled immortal from heaven. As if in a trance, he thought, this person might be the world's warmest and cleanest existence. The time agreed with Li Yanqing was from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So after eating breakfast, Jing Shao didn't rush to go out. He sat on the Luohan couch, Luohan couch, and accompanied his family's wife to drink tea. Fu Ren and the two concubines have come to give their greetings. Zhi Si came to report. After Mu Hanzhang nodded, Song Lingxing and the two concubines walked in, giving the Wang Fei salutations and paying their respects. Seeing Jing Shao was also there. Naturally, they gave him their greetings first. When concubine Liu rose, she was a little slower than others. It seemed as if she was unwell, her body swaying before falling. Mu Hanzhang subconsciously reached out to catch her, but unexpectedly, Jing Shao reacted even faster, with one move hauling her up. What a joke! Falling like this, she almost fell headfirst into the arms of Junqing. Wang Ye. The beautiful concubine Liu lifted her pair of autumn water-like eyes and looked at Jing Shao. This lowly concubine's body is unwell and have accidentally collided with you. Mu Hanzhang's hand that was stretched out took a sharp turn, picking up the teacup on the table and sipped a mouthful as if he had not seen anything. Jing Shao wrinkled his brow. Apparently, he did not see the intentions in those autumn water eyes. The fourth-rank concubine falling like this reminded him of how his previous life she seemed to have fallen in the garden into his arms. It was then he realized that she had extraordinary looks, and thus he pampered her for a period of time. But as a result, when the princess mansion ran into some misfortune, this woman mysteriously disappeared. Now he could assume that she has been sent by the eldest prince. In that case, the evidence determining his crimes during that year must have been her work. The concubine, seeing Wang Ye staring at her, couldn't help but feel happy in her heart. On the surface, however, her appearance still seemed as if she were too weak to stand up to the wind. Song Lingxin, who was watching this, was clenching her teeth. This seducing fox spawn. Concubine Li looked at the situation and rolled her eyes, retreating to the side and standing there, not speaking. Wang Ye, the thing Qie mentioned yesterday. Song Lingxin stepped forward, breaking the strange atmosphere in the room. I have already given it to Duofu. Mu Hanchang lowered his eyes, blowing at the tea foam on the surface, and lightly sipping a mouthful of hot tea. I discussed it with Wang Ye. You are still in charge of the household matters for this month. On the second day of next month, give me all the accounts books in your hands. The smile on Song Lingxin's face suddenly became stiff, and in the blink of an eye, she looked towards Jingshao. Jingshao just turned his head and looked at Mu Hancheng. Then won't you start getting busy next month? There are, there are many matters of different kinds. If Wang Fei wants to take over next month, I'm afraid that it will be very busy for a long time. Seeing Jingshao's interruption, Fu Song's eyes ignited with hope again, and hurriedly went along with it. Naturally, I will be a bit busier than I am now, but either way, I have nothing to do, Mu Hanzhang said to Jingshao. Then I will take advantage of you not having anything to do and take you out to play for a few days. Jingshao knit his brows, as they were in the presence of the concubines, he also did not say too much. Song Lingxing's smile became more rigid, her complexion a little blue, and she brought the two concubines to retreat. When they exited, she ferociously pulled at the handkerchief in her hands. The two concubines looked at each other, and Concubine Li stepped forward to say, "The scented tea we had at sister's place before. I have been thinking about it a lot." Song Lingxing glanced at them. She used to think that these two women's presence was irksome. Now she had met a formidable enemy, and must win those two over to her own side first. Thus, after saying a few courteous words, she invited the two to go to the small pavilion for tea. A man getting mixed up in the inner court's wifely duties, and he still doesn't feel like he's losing face for scholars. In the small flower pavilion, Song Lingxi put the teacup down on the table heavily. He is being favored right now. I'm afraid that sister won't be able to compete with him. The fourth-rank concubine narrowed her pair of fox eyes. The difference between her previous demeanor and now was extremely big. But I heard in the 2 days that Wang Ye stayed overnight in the East Court, they did nothing together. Concubine Li smiled. The morning after the bridal chamber, he already fell ill, and I heard that the injury wasn't light. In my opinion, he formed some sort of agreement with Wang Ye. What do you mean by this? This time, Song Lingxi's heart became spirited. Concubine Li's relationship with those servant girls was good, and the people in Wang Ye's house would also pass on information to her. I heard that when he was taking medicine that day, Wang Fei and Wang Ye had a quarrel in the room, and also said something about divorce papers. Concubine Li relayed the news she had inquired about with full confidence. If it's like this, then is Wang Ye planning to find a suitable opportunity to divorce him? The fourth-rank concubine timely added in her thoughts. If this is the case, then once he is taking over the household duties, the opportunity to find a reason to divorce him will be easier. A smile reappeared on Song Lingxi's face. Then, within this month, she will take advantage of it and leave a perfect setup of operations for Wang Fei. The prince, who was discussed by the group of concubines, was currently sticking to his family's Wang Fei, watching the other paint. Why did Wang Ye go out to practice martial arts yesterday? Mu Hancheng saw him staring fixedly at himself and was looking for a topic to chat about with him. I went looking for someone to fight with. Jingshao rested his upper body on the table, very inquisitive about Mu Hancheng's deft brush nip. What are you painting? A painting for a birthday offering. The weasel bristled brush between his fingers, freely stroked across the fine paper like moving clouds and flowing water. Next month is my father's birthday. Previously, I didn't let him get involved with the salt certifications, and instead had him go northwest to trade horses. Jingshao remembered that time when they went to visit his parents, and blurted it out. Trade horses? Mu Hanzhang's brush tip paused, and an extra black dot was formed on the mountains at the bottom. So he hurriedly added a few strokes, turning it into moss. Some things couldn't be discussed right now. Jing Xiao didn't plan to explain more. Getting up, he picked up a brush. When painting a birthday offering, no need to take so much trouble. I'll paint one for you. Mu Hancheng spread out a piece of paper for him. Curious about what he wanted to paint, he just saw Jing Xiao brandishing his brush with vitality, swishing down a few strokes, and then an ugly turtle vividly appeared on the paper. The corner of Mu Hancheng's mouth twitched. Is this a birthday offering? 1,000-year-old tortoise, or an 80,000 years of old soft-shell turtle? Isn't this more like an offering for the elderly? Jing Xiao was immensely pleased with himself. Although this was disrespectful to his father, Mu Hancheng couldn't help but laugh out loud. If Wang Ye gave this painting to father, I'm afraid others would make a joke out of him. Then just send your painting first. Wait until it's the North Marquis's birthday, and then you can just send mine. Jing Xiao raised his painting up and looked at it. He said to Yunchu standing by the side, "Go mount it." Yes, Yunchu choked back his laugh and rolled up the painting. Seeing that it was almost noon and Jing Xiao was still hanging around in the small study room without moving, Mu Hancheng urged him to go out and properly go forth with his business. You come with me. I'm just explaining something to him. Just a couple of sentences. In the afternoon, I will take you out to the outskirts of the city to play. Jing Xiao wanted to take Junqing to taste the snacks in the south of the city, and then go see if the peach blossoms in his brother's manor had blossomed yet. These things were things he liked in the last life, yet after he woke up, he had not seen them. He really wanted to go take a look with Junqing. Mu Hancheng was unable to convince him otherwise, so he could only change his clothes and go with him. At the Immortal Assembly restaurant, Li Yanqing happily rubbed his hands. Wang Ye, this is... Seeing the unfamiliar face behind Jing Xiao, the smile on his face was somewhat cautious. This is my residence guest, Mr. Jun. His presence won't hinder anything. Jing Xiao did not mind and pulled Mu Hancheng to sit down. Today, I let you come in order to tell you that in future, this kind of business can't be done anymore. Wang Ye! Li Yanqing turned pale with fright. He looked left and right and lowered his voice, asking, "Did something happen?" There was a rumor in the imperial court, so it's better to exercise restraint. Jing Xiao poured himself a cup of wine. You, go find Ren Feng. I told him about the specific regulations. He will tell you what to do in the future. Yesterday, when he was going to his villa, while he was there, he also dealt with the matter of the salt certification business. After Li Yanqing left, Mu Hancheng was silent for a moment and said, "What issue did Wang Ye come across in court?" Jing Xiao looked at him, and his lips hooked up, smiling. There is nothing wrong right now, but has Junqing heard the rumors in the capital? Mu Hancheng lowered his eyes and thought about it. Is it the rumors that Chen Wang will come to punish the children who cry at night? His Junqing is really smart. Jing Xiao felt that talking to him required the least effort. This matter has its effects and its causes, and they must be dealt with separately. But for now, we must deal with the so-called effects first. Mu Hancheng played with the wine cup in his hands and slowly rubbed along the edge of the cup. Two more chapters. Chapter 14. Green Plums. Jing Xiao's eyes lit up and he moved to his wife's side. What is the effect? What is the cause? He really did not have a clue about the purpose of the rumors. He only thought that he would make any evidence of his crime disappear. Recently, he was keeping a very low profile, so the rumors would naturally slowly die away. The so-called effect is the rumor itself, and the so-called origin is the person who spreads those rumors, or a group of people. Mu Hancheng looked up at him, saw he understood, and then went on. Presently, we must resolve the rumor itself. They say that public opinion is powerful enough to melt metal. The mass spreading of rumors can confuse right and wrong. The more it spread, the more it will become the truth. Perhaps now Imperial Father will dismiss it with a laugh, but after a few years, it may not be so. Junqing! Jingxiao grabbed the hand holding the wine cup. At this moment, he almost thought that Qingqing was also reborn, but immediately rejected the idea. Otherwise, how would he not see the differences between himself and him in the previous life? But if Qingqing was not reborn, then his foresight and his intelligence couldn't be underestimated. Wang Ye. Mu Hanzhang did not understand the situation. He did not know why this person was suddenly grasping his hands. You are willing to help me. I am so happy. Realizing that his behavior was a bit abrupt, Jing Xiao quickly explained with a sentence, but did not let go of the hand of him. The person who was grabbed felt a little bit uncomfortable and lowered his eyes. Taking his hand back, I have already married you. If I don't help you, then who will I help? Junqing. Jing Xiao looked at the person in front of him. This person had talents to govern and serve the country well. Yet he had wholly given himself in marriage to him. Not only did he not harm him, but he was also willing to put forth ideas and suggestions to help him. The him in the past life was really so stupid. He couldn't help but reach out and hug Mu Hanzhang tightly in his arms. In this life, if you don't abandon me, I, Jing Xiao, will never turn my back on you. Mu Hanzhang distractedly leaned onto his chest. He couldn't understand why this person was suddenly being so emotional. In his heart, he thought, could it be possible that this wasn't the place to talk? So he deliberately interrupted himself. Thinking about this restaurant, there were many people and eyes, so their next words couldn't be rashly spoken. Thus, he also stopped his words. Let's eat first. Yes, you must be hungry. Come, eat first. Jing Xiao remembered that they had not had lunch yet. Li Yanqing had ordered a table of good dishes, but he himself did not even move his chopsticks before impatiently going to find Wen Feng. Now, if they didn't eat soon, all the dishes would be cold. The two ate their meal, but they were not in a hurry to return home. Jing Xiao put his family's Wang Fei to the main streets for some leisure time, enjoying a walk to aid digestion. Both of them were unusually handsome and extraordinary people, one in a cold and pure way, the other in a gentle as jade way. They were still holding hands on the street, although Jing Xiao was pulling the other along and refusing to let go, which drew in passers-by who were surprised one by one. Where are we going? Mu Hanzhang helplessly let himself be pulled along. When they were outside, it was not good to call him Wang Ye, so he could only omit the title. Going to the south of the city, Jing Xiao said as he turned and went into a shop, weighing out 2 catties of sautéed melon seeds and then pulling him into the alleys again, making 7 or 8 turns before he finally found a shop that looked quite old. The shop had no name, and only a wooden tablet piece was hanging by the wall, and 2 lines of words were written. A handsome youth rides by on a horse, aiding the maiden in reaching the green plums above the fence. Crossing the threshold, as they entered the store, all the things in the store were made out of bamboo. They were polished spotless. The floor of the store was not paved, it was completely soiled. In the 4 corners of the room was actually planted a living bamboo. It looked very elegant and tranquil. Good place. Mu Hanzhang couldn't help but praise it with a phrase. Ha! This gentleman does not dislike this shop for being simple and crude. You must be a cultured person. A rather clear and bright woman's voice came from behind the door. Looking over, they saw a married woman in her 30s, dressed in a plum pink zong dress, holding a jug, walking in from the back garden. Maiden May, I trust that you have been well since we last met. Jing Xiao seemed to be very familiar with this place, smiling and greeting the shop's mistress. Maiden May? Mu Hanzhang gave a glance at the person at his side. This woman was clearly wearing the zong dress of a married woman. Moreover, she was also approaching the age of becoming a mother. Why did he still call the other Maiden May? Was he being really frivolous? He was really being frivolous, not knowing where to stop. Jing Xiao looked back at him with an innocent expression, pulling him to the front of the wine cabinet. You youngster, still so cheeky. The proprietress put down her wine jar and walked behind the high counter. What do you want? A small bottle of green plum wine and also 2 wine cups. Jing Xiao took out a piece of silver and placed it on the bamboo counter. Hold it! The proprietress took the money and pulled the bottle of wine and 2 small wine cups into a bamboo basket and threw it at Jing Xiao. She looked up and glanced at Mu Hanzhang again, smiling and saying, This gentleman looks unfamiliar, but his bearing is extraordinary. You must be a scholar. I will give you a cheaper price next time you come by. Jingxiao was suddenly not happy anymore and took the person at his side into his arms. He is my newly wedded wife. Don't imagine that I will allow your plan to hit on him. Quickly get out, quickly get out. The next time I'll charge you twice the price. The lady boss suddenly changed her expression, holding a bamboo twig and tapping it on the counter, making pa-pa sound. Jingxiao smiled and took his family's Wang Fei and left with quick steps. In this store, Mu Hanzhang frowned, feeling it was quite strange. Jingxiao smiled and stuffed the paper bag holding the melon seeds into his hands. He held the green plum wine himself, still making space for one hand to continue to pull Mu Hanzhang along. It's a long story. The woman, surnamed Mei, was an orphan, and her neighbor was also an orphan. From childhood, these two people were dependent on each other for survival. The girl had a wine-making technique that was passed through her family's generations, so she made wine at home. The boy would then take it out in order to sell to maintain the two's means of livelihood. When the man was 16 years old, he was enlisted into the army, but he said that once he made a distinguished career out of himself, he would come back and marry her. When Jingxiao was in the army, the man had already become a vanguard. He was foolishly storing away the silver that was paid to him, saying that it was for when he went home to marry his green plum maiden. It was a pity that in the beginning of the second year of Jingxiao's enlistment, the man died in battle, and so Maiden Mei never married. After finishing the story, the two of them had already reached the middle of a peach blossom forest. March is the season when peach blossoms are in full bloom. After Mu Hanzhang collected his thoughts about the story, he sighed and was full of his sight was full of the luminous peach blossoms, a vivid pink color as far as the eye could see, continuing on into the horizon. It's so beautiful, Mu Hanzhang said softly. The scenery was very beautiful, and the story was also beautiful. Unfortunately, the ending of the story was like the pink peach blossom petals filling the eyes. In the end, it could only be carried away by the wind, withered and fallen. Jingxiao saw that he was a little bit melancholic and hugged him from behind, putting his chin on the shoulder of the other. Brother Wang is a good person. When I first entered the military barracks, I couldn't eat the crude food there, and I went hungry for many meals. He didn't know that I was the Wang Ye, but he still secretly caught a bird and roasted it for me to eat. Thus, he had always been taking care of that maiden Mei behind the scenes. Wang Ye is actually very kind-hearted. Mu Hanzhang slightly perked the corners of his mouth. Jingxiao inwardly smiled. Kind-hearted? He did not feel that this word has much in common to himself at all. He believed in returning kindness, but didn't hesitate in taking an eye for an eye. However, if he could change Junqing's impression of him with this, then just let him think this way. Pulling his family's Wang Fei along, he walked into the depths of the peach blossoms. Not long after, a delicate little pavilion appeared in front of their eyes. This is such a nice place. Why don't we see anyone else here? Mu Hanzhang opened up the paper bag and poured them both a cup of green plum wine. Jingxiao smiled. This garden is a private garden of his brother Jingsheng. Naturally, no one dared to come in so casually. Just before, Junqing was listening to his story too intently and did not notice that they entered a small moon gate, and that there were also imperial guards posted on both sides of the moon gate. Upon hearing those words, Mu Hanzhang finally understood why he was brought here. Outsiders could not enter this place, and the surroundings were especially spacious and empty. They had no need to fear people eavesdropping so that they can continue the unfinished topic they had at Immortal's Gathering Restaurant. If Wang Ye really does not intend to fight for the throne, then it isn't urgent to restore your reputation. Mu Hanzhang held his wine cup with two hands. The cup had been made with a bamboo cylinder. It was not worth much, but it was particularly charming. But we also can't allow them to continue spreading the rumors as they wish. The best method to fight falsehood is with falsehood. What do you mean? Jingxiao only heard that there was such a method for the first time, and could not help but move a little closer. People who spread rumors are nothing more than jealous of the achievements Wang Ye attained. So all they have to do is find an adversary that Wang Ye hates, and then have them write something bad about you. It's not important if it's true or false, as long as it's unpleasant to hear. Mu Hanzhang's beautiful eyes slightly narrowed. Looking at him, it seemed somewhat cunning. The civilians don't care whether it's true or false. As long as it sounds shocking, they will always enjoy it and pass it on. When the time comes regarding the gossip about Wang Ye, it will naturally be forgotten. Jing Shao's eyes widened. It seems that Jin Xing had guessed the source of the rumor was one of his two brothers. It was also possible that it was the Empress. If they could make up random lies and falsehoods, then so could they. You are really good at explaining things in a way that I can understand, Jin Xing. You are much more devious than me. Jing Shao laughed heartily, but at the same time he was also rejoicing. If the people helping the Empress were not those stupid little concubines of his, and was rather the person before his eyes, he feared that in his previous life he would have died many years earlier. Chen was just judging the matter as it stands. Being spoken about by Jing Shao this way made Mu Hanzheng somewhat uncomfortable, subconsciously increasing the strength he used to rub along the edge of the wine cup. But unexpectedly, the edge of the bamboo had not been polished, and a thin silver of bamboo pricked his fingertip. The sharp pain caused him to wrinkle his brow, and he looked down to see. A round bit of blood had already emerged. Qingqing! Jing Shao scuttled over and grabbed the injured hand skillfully, pulling out the sharp thorn. The 10 fingers are linked to the heart. Mu Hanzheng could not help but suck in the breath of cold air. More beads of blood came out from the wound, but Jing Shao's next move made him even forget to even cry out in alarm. Jing Shao looked at the jade-like fingers that kept bleeding. He worriedly sucked it into his mouth, lapping up the beads of blood, and then gently sucked at it a couple of times to prevent any of the thin thorns from remaining in the flesh. When he raised his head, Mu Hanzheng's face was so red, it looked like he would start dripping blood. Seeing him looked over, he hurriedly lowered his eyes. Peach blossom petals fluttered in the wind. Jing Shao only felt that the person who was being shy and blushing with shame in front of him was beautiful like a peach blossom dating. He couldn't help but grab his family's Wang Fei, who was about to emit smoke from embarrassment, and pulled him close, holding the back of his head, and opportunely kiss him. When the scorching touch of his lips grinded against his own, Mu Hanzheng, who had been sneak attacked, didn't resist much. But when a soft, slippery thing stretched into his mouth and attempted to get him to separate his teeth, he was really stunned. Wang Ye! Just as he was about to speak, the nimble thing took the opportunity to drill in and gently swept over the top of his mouth. His body trembled as he experienced this unfamiliar feeling. Mu Hanzheng did not know where his strength came from, but with one push, he shoved Jing Shao out of the pavilion. Jing Shao was not prepared and was unexpectedly pushed out of the pavilion. He subconsciously reached out to grab a branch of peach tree, but unexpectedly the branch was damaged by worms, and with a kacha sound, the branch snapped, and thus the handsome and imposing, brilliant and outstanding in military service, kind-hearted, the Chiang Wang who assaulted his wife with lewd intentions all day, finally fell flat on his back. This is so cute. Okay, last chapter, bedtime stories for tonight. I don't think I'll be writing more, but I will try. Chapter 15. Crazy. The two people had gone playing outside for an entire day, so once they returned to their residence, it was already dark, and it had already passed dinner time. Because the womenfolk lived in the west court, they locked up a lot earlier than the east court, and thus Mu Hanzheng excused the few concubines from their evening respects so as not to delay the lock-up procedure of the west court. Between the screen, a hot tub of water was prepared. Spices given as tribute from foreign lands were added into the water, and a layer of fresh peach blossom petals were also sprinkled on top. Mu Hanzheng saw Jing Shao undressing and preparing to take a bath. He picked up a book and sat down on the Luohan couch. Luohan? I don't know what this is. Waiting for him to finish washing up first, and then he would bathe himself. Yet, he was caught by Jing Shao. Jinqing, you made me fall onto the ground today. My butt is still hurting now. Chen. Thinking of the thing that happened today, Mu Hanzhang's face flushed red again. He had already apologized to him in the afternoon. How come he was still not willing to forgive him? When you're apologizing, you must do so with sincerity. Jing Xiao grabbed the other's hands and dragged him behind the screen. I have a wound on my body. Help me bathe. Mu Hanchang stared at him with big eyes. This was the first time that he heard that injuring one's butt would make it inconvenient to take a bath. I don't know. No worries, I will also help you wash. Jing Xiao, who was very pleased with himself, took off his clothes until he was completely naked, taking the lead and jumped into the tub of water. Seeing that his Wang Fei was still staring blankly and standing in its original position without moving, he patted the wooden tub. Hurry and come in, or else I'll punish you to help me apply medicine in a little while. Apply medicine? Mu Hanchang bit his lower lip. Helping him apply medicine in that place? On the bed? Or sit in the tub, face to face, completely naked together? When comparing options, either one seemed rather dangerous. But if he was applying medicine, then he could still be fully clothed. This is so funny, oh my god. Give me a second. Oh, thank you for subscribing. I know my voice is kind of like getting higher as I read because it's difficult for me to lower down my voice and it's aching right now, so it's currently gonna sound like this from chapter 15. Don't mind me. I was trying to make the man voice, but apparently it doesn't work. Oh my god, this is so funny. Jinxing, Jingxiao, funny, watching his Wang Fei biting his lower lip, looking like he was thinking very hard. He only felt that it was extremely cute. Then Chen will help Wang Ye to apply the medicine. After saying that, he immediately ran out without looking back. Jing Xiao laughed heartily as he lay in the tub. After Mu Hanzhang had also finished washing, when he changed into a new set of silk clothes and emerged from behind the screen, he saw a certain Wang Ye, only wearing an inner garment, wearing no underwear, lying down on his stomach on a bed with a bare butt, reading a military strategy book keenly. Wang Ye! Mu Hanzhang's face immediately turned red. Why was this person like this? Junqing. When Jing Xiao saw his family's Wang Fei had finished bathing and came out, he hurriedly threw away the military strategy book in his hands and obediently handed over a small bottle. Mu Hanzhang was powerless and could only climb onto the bed and pour some medicine into the palm of his hands. Looking at the perfectly curved place in front of his eyes, there was only a little bruising on both sides. In the rest of the region, the muscles are well shaped. With one glance, the muscles looked to be full of explosive power. And then if you kept looking down, those perfectly straight, lanky legs merged together, and the sleek muscle made this pair of legs look beautiful, but also brimming with dangerous power. The slippery, medicated fluid slid between his fingers, dripping onto that attractive, smooth, and round place. Only then did Mu Hanzhang exit his trance. He stole a look at Jing Xiao and found that the man was not looking at him. He lightly sighed and placed the hand with medicine onto that place. When the warm and soft hand touched him, Jing Xiao immediately regretted it. This tactile sensation was really too satisfactory, to the extent that his body under his Wang Fei's kneading was rapidly reacting. He could not help but inwardly complain. Right now, Junqing had still not alleviated his fear of the bridal room. How could he resolve the fire stirring up in him? Finished applying it, Mu Hanzhang climbed out of bed, putting the medicine bottle back in place, and also letting his body that had somewhat gotten hot cool down. The depressed Jing Xiao replied with a single sound, still lying down on his stomach, not moving. Wang Ye, let's sleep. Mu Hanzhang, seeing him not moving, could only climb back into the interior of the bed and help him cover up with a quilt. I have medicine on my behind. I will sleep on my stomach tonight. Jing Xiao buried his face onto the pillow, suffering the disaster he brought upon himself, having to sleep lying on his stomach for the whole night. The next day, Jing Xiao went out early in the morning to the second prince's house and discussed with his brother the stratagem that he had formulated with Jinqing yesterday after consulting him. Duofu, according to Wang Fei's instructions, brought all the accounts books of the past years into the small study room. Wang Fei, these are all the accounts from the past 3 years. Do you really want to look through all of them? Yunshu looked at the 1 high stack of accounting books and gulped. Mu Hanzheng only lightly responded, dividing the account books into 3 piles, starting to look through the oldest ones. The accounting books are what all bookkeepers should look at. Why do you have to work so hard? Yunshu is somewhat puzzled. Wang Fei wanted to learn how to manage the household. If he asked manager Tuo how to do it, or went to see how Fu Ren did it, then wouldn't it be fine like that? Mu Hanzheng glanced at the frowning little book boy, laughed and said nothing. There were a lot of useful things contained in these accounting books. The food and clothing expenses for the manor, the relations with the people who come and go from the manor, any transference of servants, all could be discovered from the accounts books. In fact, the administration of the country was also this way. By looking at the account books of the Ministry of Revenue, you can know whether the monarch is mother-hated or not, and whether this dynasty was prosperous or not. Okay, short intermission. I'd like to confirm that this is true because I used to work in accounts, so yes. This servant heard that Fu Ren was checking the storeroom's inventory yesterday, and together with some servants, she dilly-dallied away an entire morning. Yunshu took advantage of Mu Hanzheng, who was tired of reading and was taking a break to drink some tea, and whispered to him the information he had discreetly sought out himself. I know. Mu Hanzheng rubbed Yunshu's head and rewarded him with a handful of pine nut candies they had bought yesterday. He couldn't disagree that checking the inventory in the storeroom at this time was definitely to conceal something. Wang Fei's monthly portion of silver for March was still not given to you by the accountant at all. Yesterday, I went to get some writing paper and almost wasn't able to get it. Yunshu ate a pine nut candy. When he spoke about this, he was somewhat angry. Fortunately, Wang Fei is a man and lived with Wang Ye in the East Court, and so all the usages of the East Court counted towards Wang Ye's account. If he was a woman who married him, then he wouldn't even have food to eat. Mu Hanzheng, only having heard this, thought about how he truly had no silver in his hands. If there were any urgent matters, it would be difficult to handle. The accounts books would not be able to be looked over in just a short time, so Mu Hanzheng had an afternoon nap after lunch. Only then he returned to the study. Wang Ye, you've returned. When Mu Hanzheng came out of the bedroom, he bumped into... Sorry, I read that wrong. Wang Ye, you've returned. When Mu Hanzheng came out of the bedroom, he bumped into Jing Shao, who was walking in quick steps, and almost had a full-on collision with him. Jing Shao looked straight at him. His eyes were a little red, and he did not look quite right. After seeing who the person was in front of him, he reached out and grabbed the wrist, turning around and walking out again. Wang Yi, oh. Mu Hanzheng, who was pulled behind him, staggered and almost fell down. He stumbled his way along as he was pulled to the front courtyard. The servants, one after another, gathered to watch with excitement, whispering about whether the Wang Fei had offended the Wang Ye or not. Jing Shao did not say a word and put Mu Hanzheng up onto a horse. Clamping his legs onto the horse's abdomen, Xiao Hei neighed and rushed out as swift as an arrow. The steed galloped on a road going outside of the capital, and Jing Shao dazedly felt as if he returned to the snowy day before his rebirth when they were fleeing. Those few warm and comfortable days allowed him to forget, for a while, what frame of mind he had been when he opened his eyes once more. Mu Hanzheng, who was leaning back behind him, sensed the rage in his heart and slowly hugged his waist tightly. Feeling the pressure on his waist, Jing Shao stretched out a hand and gripped on his two overlapping heads, madly dashing all the way into his other court in the suburbs of the city. Ignoring the Imperial Guard's cries of surprise in the courtyard, riding Xiao Hei all the way to the practice platform for martial arts. With a light step, he leapt onto the wooden platform, took out a pike, and not even looking at who was on the stage, attacked the other and started to fight. Wang Ye! Renfeng, who was currently on stage demonstrating some of the movements to his subordinates, was startled. He subconsciously raised his hand and caught the maneuver. When he saw that it was Jingshao, he hurriedly retreated 3 steps. 3 steps. Unexpectedly, Jingshao directly rushed over. Renfeng turned and pulled out a long rod, blocking the spear pole that hacked down above his head. Jingshao seemed as if he was on the battlefield, fighting for his life, and after a while, he threw Renfeng, who was afraid of hurting him, off the platform. Without an opponent, he continued to brandish the spear on the platform. The silver-colored handle of the spear seemed like a graceful dragon, slashing traces of silver through the air. Mu Hanzhang frowned, watching the person on the platform who had gone crazy, and in a low voice instructed Renfeng to leave the place with the others for now. The sun slid down from the top of the mountain to the foot. An originally gloomy sky began to drizzle with thin drops of rain. Xiaohei had already been taken to the stable, and the people around the platform had all dispersed. Mu Hancheng looked at the person on the platform, who was still brandishing his silver spear, and slowly walked onto it. Wang Ye, it's gotten dark. Mu Hancheng stood on the platform and calmly said with an even tone, swish, swish. There was no sign of stopping in the action that slashed through the air. The red tassel on the spear caused droplets of water to fly in all directions. Mu Hanzhang clenched his fist, turned and drew out a broadsword. He swung his arm and threw it towards him. Jingshao, come down! Kuangdang! The sound of collision between the spearhead and the steel knife recalled Jingshao's reason. His movements wielding the spear paused for a moment. Jingshao looked at him. He screamed up at the sky once, leaping up high. The silver spear hacked the top of the wooden stick, splitting it into many pieces. The silver spears fell to the ground, and blood dripped down Jingshao's fingers onto the ground, mixing with the pattern of rain, quickly turning it into a diluted red color. Mu Hanzhang ran over and clasped his right hand. The web between his thumb and forefinger had been split. The blood blisters had also appeared on his palms, due to the friction between his skin and the spear. He fished out a handkerchief from his sleeve and pressed it onto the wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. Jingshao raised his head up to the sky. The rain fell into his eyes and slipped down his cheeks. Junqing, they caused the death of my imperial mother. My imperial mother. Jingshao whispered. The voice was not loud at all, only like a murmur. But Mu Hanzhang nevertheless heard it clearly. Jingshao used up all his strength and slipped to the ground. Mu Hanzhang crouched down and slowly hugged him to his chest. Shao, what happened? Junqing. Jingshao buried his face into his shoulder. Today, his brother listened to his plan. He was pleased to find that his younger brother had finally grown up and told him some of the things he had said to him before. Among these matters included the real cause of the Empress's death. Dang dang! Chapter 15 done! Thank you guys. Yes, you are not too late. Although I might be late. I know my voice is kind of like getting higher as I go along, but my voice is extremely tired, so I can't keep this up for long. I should have just started off with this pitch, right? Instead of trying to make it sound like I'm a man. I can't. I'm sorry. But yes, if you actually do like this series, do let me know. Or if you have another series you'd like me to start reading, you can let me know as well. So today is a chillax stream. It's like 10:45-ish p.m. my time. I'll be probably joining sprints on the server for in a little while. And yeah, so I'll see you guys there on my Discord server if you're not already there. And yes, so that's it for tonight. Thank you for joining. Bye bye.